Here's something people don't always realize. When someone enters hospice care, the patient isn't the only one who needs support. There's a husband who hasn't slept in 3 days, a daughter who flew in from out of state and doesn't know how to talk to her siblings, a son who's holding it together in front of everyone while falling apart when he's alone. Hospice care sees them all. Today, we're sitting down with a hospice social worker, someone whose job it is to hold the whole picture when a family is at their most overwhelmed. She helps with conversations nobody wants to have, the feelings no one knows how to name, and sometimes the very practical things, like what happens next and who they can call. She's going to tell us what she wishes more people understood about her role, about grief, and about what families actually need when they're standing in the middle of the hardest thing they've ever faced. I'm Miranda Lindsay, and this is It's More Than You Think, Hospice Honestly. And this episode is for everyone who's been the one trying to hold the family together. Welcome. Thank you for being with us to change the narrative about hospice. Do you want to introduce yourself?
My name is Lori Torres Polk. I'm a social worker, have been for 18 plus years.
Can you explain the role of a hospice social worker and how does your work fit into the overall care team?
So the role of the social worker is to handle any emotional support needs, to find economical avenues that they may need to help take care of them. I help with waiver programs, food stamp applications, Medicaid applications, VA benefits. Patients don't even know that they're entitled to certain VA benefits. So I'm educating them on community resources that they're not aware of. A lot of times, Council on Aging, just the few things that they offer is a big deal to certain patients. And then as far as my role with the team, we meet every 2 weeks with our whole team, including the physician, and we speak about all of our patients, what's going on with them, what has happened in the last 2 weeks. We give the doctor updates, and I throw in any input that I have. And that's just where we but obviously, if I'm seeing a patient and I notice the patient's more depressed or has increased anxiety, I'm going to let the nurse know that day. I'm not going to wait until the meeting.
Sure.
So, but communication. That's all it's about.
So you would say you consider yourself an advocate for the patient?
Yes, absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you. So just let's back up a little bit. Your background. What drew you into this field and what do you find to be the most fulfilling about your role?
So I've been a social worker since 1991, and hospice was nowhere near where I wanted to be. But I loved the medical aspect of social work. And but it wasn't until my grandparents were both on hospice and my aunt told me how wonderful they were in the care that she witnessed. And I had an opportunity and I took it and I was with them for 9 years until I moved. So
I feel like a lot of people in the hospice field come into it after a personal experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I feel most, what was the question?
What drew you to the field and what do you find most fulfilling about being a social worker in hospice?
I get to do what I've always wanted to do, just help people get what they need to make the quality of life that they have left good. And that's just rewarding knowing that I've helped them with that.
A very large part of your role in hospice is emotional challenges that patients and their families encounter. How do you navigate those and help them through those challenges?
So a lot of the most difficult emotions is the denial. And we're getting more of that more so now because patients are younger. And it's pretty sad when you're taking care of patients that are your age, that are, that have been recently diagnosed with an illness that is terminal, and they have young kids to take care of, and they have, their parents that they're looking in on, and now they need the care. So denial's a big one. And I just kind of meet the patient where they're at, and we just talk about their fears and, what do they want that their end of life to look like, you know? Um, we don't go in day one and gloom and doom everything, um, because hospice is not about that. It's about living a good quality of life until the very end. So that's what we try to focus on.
I'm gonna throw you a curveball. How do you navigate what your patient wants versus what their family wants?
Yeah, that's fun. We just, you have to talk to them about patient rights. And I'm a strong advocate for patient rights. And we work on advanced directives to get those in place before the patient gets to where they no longer can make those choices. And then I meet with the family all together to make sure that the patient's wishes are known by everyone. Um, yeah, that's pretty difficult, but I haven't had a hard time with that. Once you get them in there and you have them understand that she still has rights in her care, she's still the captain of her ship, um, until the end, until she makes someone else that captain.
So you mentioned advanced directives, and you
Mhm.
alluded to making someone else the captain of that ship.
Mhm.
What documents or decisions are important for patients and or their families to make, maybe before they get to this point, but definitely once they get to this point, that you sometimes help navigate?
Yes. The patient still has to be definitely alert and oriented. Um, they can't sign papers if they don't know the date or where they are or anything like that. So they need to be alert and oriented. And um, I read verbatim um, everything on. I use the 5 wishes a lot because it's an all-inclusive living will and healthcare power of attorney all in one. And the patient can be very specific with it, and I just like them having that option. Um, but I just tell them to choose someone that, and it can be a friend, it can be a family member, um, that they trust, that will make sure that their wishes are carried through. Um, and in Louisiana, that does not need to be notarized. It just needs two non-family witnesses. So typically, a lot of times I'll get my chaplain or my volunteer coordinator or the nurse. I don't like to use the nurse, but I will if I have to be the second witness.
Can you give us an example or, describe how you assist with grief and loss during the process as well as after the process? Because your job does not end
No.
when the patient passes.
No, not at all. So I share a lot of the symptoms in a book called Gone From My Sight. That is an amazing book. It helps patients and their families to be aware of the expected symptoms that they're possibly going to go through. Maybe not in that exact timeline, but it's common symptoms at the end of life. And we kind of go through that and kind of talk more in detail about those symptoms and where they are and how they feel at that time. And you can tell a lot by body language. So if I can tell that they're struggling, then we'll sit and we'll talk about it. And, if I need more visits, I make more visits. At the end, we do have a bereavement coordinator. It's our chaplain, but a lot of times I'm called in, especially if there's younger children, which is happening more so these days. Or if I'm having a spouse that is really struggling with the death. So I'll go and visit them months out, year out, whatever they need. So I'm always available.
Literally. Always.
Literally.
So you mentioned bereavement.
Mhm.
I know the answer, but will you share how long bereavement is?
So bereavement is up to 13 months after a patient passes. The our chaplain keeps up with phone calls to the family and cards um, of encouragement and um, just a reminder to call if they need us. Um, and sometimes, well, a lot of times it'll go past that 13 months, but that's kind of the hospice uh, time frame.
Okay.
So,
But at month 13, we're not cutting families off to
no,
never.
absolutely
Okay.
not.
How do you ensure the patient's values and beliefs are respected through their care?
So,
Maybe even once they're unable to actually verbalize that to you, that you've already had those conversations. And how do you ensure that as the process moves forward?
just continue to advocate for the patient and um, their spirituality, um, their culture. I've done a lot of research because I used to work in Baton Rouge and we had a very, very diverse population. And, you gotta investigate those things and meet those patients where they're at and families. So, and I just try to educate my staff as well on, I don't know if you're aware, but this is, who they are. This is who they, you know, you need to respect this. And yeah. So I share with my staff those things.
Feels like communication is a really, really big part of what
Yeah.
you do, both with the patient and their families, their loved ones, but also your care team to make sure that everyone is all on the same page as much as possible.
Yes. Yes.
It's a good question. What are some of the biggest challenges you face as a social worker?
Resources, y'all, the community resources. A lot of times I don't understand how hospitals can send patients home and not have proper community resources in place. And then by the time they get to me, their time's a lot of times limited. And those community resources take time. And they don't realize that all the time. They think I have this magic little fairy wand that I can wave and there you go, you have the services, and that's not the case. Um, so and then a lot of times it's the services are no longer available or they don't meet criteria or eligibility. And so that's frustrating because you're out there telling the families what is available out there. And then they forget, oh, well, mom gets an extra check. Oh, okay, well, she's not eligible now. So resources are difficult.
Yeah, there's definitely not a whole lot of resources, at least in our area,
Right.
where if you don't meet certain criteria, you're not eligible. It's
Yeah.
really difficult.
Yeah.
How do you take care of your emotional well-being? And you can't say move to Alaska, but
That's the ultimate, but
how do you do that minus moving across the country on a day-to-day basis as a social worker or as a caregiver?
So I travel a lot in between with patients, going from home to home, nursing home, hospital, wherever. And I jam out a lot to my Christian contemporary music. So I jam out. And when I get home in the afternoon, I have my little Zen moment where I just kind of burn my candles and watch my favorite show and kind of chill out. But ultimately just spending time with family and friends because, I don't know when my last day is. So that's important to me. And then moving across the country.
No, I think that's important too, regardless of what your role is in the hospice journey, to make sure that you're still making time for yourself.
Right. Absolutely.
No matter what your role is. I think that's very important. What advice do you have for families who are struggling with the hospice situation in front of them or that they're in the middle of? What, if you could give them one piece of advice?
Utilize us. Utilize us, because we are, even though I do a lot with each patient, I'm still underutilized. Because I think a lot of times they think that I'm just there to put them in a nursing home or place them elsewhere and not keep them at home where they're most comfortable. So I think they kind of shy away, even though I go in and I explain my role, what I'm here for. I think that stereotype is still there on social workers. So, but just to utilize us, we can set up respite when you're feeling overwhelmed. We can provide extra counseling. And we don't have to meet at the home. We can meet at a coffee shop or wherever. We don't have to be in the midst of what's making them overwhelmed. So just utilize the staff that you have. Call and ask questions. No question is stupid, especially in healthcare. If you don't ask, you don't know. So, yeah, utilize the staff.
So for those who don't know, you mentioned respite.
Mm-hmm.
Can you explain what respite care is for those who don't know what that is?
Yes. So respite care is 5 midnights at a facility. Typically, it's at my company has their own respite locations, but we can also house at nursing facilities, certain wings on hospitals, hospital floors. But it's 5 midnights that the hospice pays for. It's included in their benefit, and they can do it every 60 days. And I'm typically the one that sets that up for the families. So I stress that a lot when I'm talking to them, and I know that they're overwhelmed with care. So and I set up the transportation. If a patient is bed or chair bound, I set up transportation for them with the ambulance. But if they're able to get in and out the car still, the family is responsible for bringing them.
So it's really just every
break.
60 days,
Mhm.
right? It's a 5-night maximum break for the family.
Yes. And it does not have to be the full 5 days. If you just wanted a weekend or 2 or 3 days out the week, it's based on your need. And really we've actually extended it to certain families because everybody is individual treated. So if you have a husband and a wife and that's it, they have no other family, they may need it more often. So we do make those little changes to the rule. So
It's a great rule.
yes.
And you say, it's individual. You personalize it, but isn't that kind of hospice care anyway? I mean, there's
Yes.
guidelines that you have to follow, obviously, but you approach every situation, every family individually.
Oh, absolutely. I may see one patient one time a month. I may see one every week. I may see one 2 to 3 times a week. It really just depends on the needs and what's going on with the care, the services that they need, the applications I need to do,
What did we not cover that you want to share? Do you have any final thoughts that you want to share about hospice in general or your role as a social worker in hospice?
I just want the community to know that hospice is a benefit that everyone is entitled to, not just the insured, not just old people, not just, it's something that everyone deserves to die with, in my opinion.
Dignity.
Yes, very much.
Definitely. Thank you, Lori, for spending time with us.
Thank you for having me.
Again, I'm Miranda Lindsay. Thank you for tuning into our episode. We'll see you next time.